What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha,
where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yes, we are. We are in the middle of our fantastical Scream rewatch. Wow, I can't say that. Rewatch. Going off to a great start. And today we are screaming for the fourth time. We are talking about... Yes.
You thought I wasn't going to do it. You thought wrong.
Exactly. The longer that they get, the more that it starts to sound like crows in the back. And then it just reminds me of like the crows. And, you know, also great. But we are talking about Scream 4, this wonderful, it's fantabulous movie. I'm giving you my opinions of this already.
Name the remake of the groundbreaking horror movie in which the villain...
Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Amityville Horror, Last House on the Left, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, My Bloody Valentine, When a Stranger Calls, Prom Night, Black Christmas, House of Wax, The Fog, Piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
It came out in 2011, and it was directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, who have done the OG, which is why it's probably better than the third one, who had a different writer. But this one, we have the dynamic duo back together again, and along with some colorful castmates that we know and love. It is starring, again, David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and some newbies, but famous newbies, as should with the franchise or with the chain. Emma Roberts, Hayden Panettiere, Anthony Anderson, Alison Brie, Adam Brody, Warwick Culkin, just to name a few. That doesn't even scratch the surface of all of the wonderful people that you see in this movie. So obviously, heavy spoilers, we're going to be talking about everything in Scream 4 from top to bottom and probably referencing Scream 1 through 3. So if you have not caught up, please press pause, catch yourself up. It's a good watch, and then come back and listen to us. Any trigger warnings, Jamie?
Lots more stabbings and murders and bloody and like some pretty gruesome ones this time around too.
A lot of insides on the outsides. Things that are happening.
Yep, they're really keeping up with that trend. Yeah.
Yes. Even more so in this go around. So before we get into it, I just want to say, as far as things that I have watched, I finally finished BoJack Horseman, and I only say that because of Alison Brie being in this movie, and she plays Diane in BoJack Horseman. And it was one of those things where I was going through it and didn't even realize I was at the end. And so when things were happening, I was like, wait a minute. And then the final scene, I was like, oh no, this is the end. This is it. But it was fantastic. I think everyone got exactly what they needed, deserved, wanted. And I'm just, I stand Princess Carolyn. So that's all I'm going to say about that. She's actually my spirit animal. Fantastic. And it was a good watch. And so I honestly didn't know Alison Brie that much before this. I watched the TV show Glow on Netflix, the women's wrestling thing.
So good.
It was so good. And I just didn't realize that she has voiced a lot of animated characters. So it was cool seeing that. And going into it, I've seen Scream 4 before, but didn't realize that was Alison Brie. I didn't know who she was at the time.
Sure. That makes sense.
Now, having watched Glow, having watched BoJack Horseman, going back and watching Scream 4 for the second time this go around, I was like, oh my God, it's Alison Brie. This is so great. Being manic and wonderful. And it was a good time. So let's get into a plot summary of this. Guys, are we
Question
ready?
mark?
Question mark? You gonna do this?
What's the plot?
Yeah, this is the random male noise here, Brian, the producer. Who is going to do this today?
Jamie put her hand on her finger on her nose.
All right,
realized
I
this
think
is
it's
not
you. I
it.
think it's you, Nikisha.
Okay, cool. I'm really just going to be like talking about all the things I loved about it, but let's see if I can get through the whole thing.
You're like, my favorite part was this, and my favorite part was also this.
Exactly.
Oh, but also my favorite part was this.
Ready?
Yeah.
Go.
So we open in as we normally do with one of the Stab movies, but then we figure out it's a movie within a movie. We're now at Stab 7, and the opening of Stab 7 is Stab 6. So crazy. So then we actually get into the actual real world, quote unquote, where people are watching the Stab 7s and then they get killed, of course, as opening credits do. The two random people are dead. And then we move into Sydney Prescott on a book tour. She was an actress. She was a therapist. And now she's a book writer. And she's going back to Woodsboro to promote her book with her manager, Allison Bree's character. And there are killings that are happening now that she is back. And we find out that her niece, or her cousin, Jill, is living in Woodsboro. She's like the new Sydney, and her friends are the ones that are getting murdered. And so Sydney is trying to help her figure out who is coming back to murder these people and murder her friends. And funny enough, they're really not going after Dewey and Gail. They're still there. They're still married. Dewey is a sheriff. So random. Where did his limp go? Who knows? But now he's back and he's a sheriff, and there's someone that's even doofier than him working for him. Named Judy. Anyway, we'll get back to that. People are dying. Sydney tries to find who the killer is through a series of events. All of Jill, who's Sydney's cousin, all of her friends die. And then at the end, we realize when Sydney is face to face with Ghostface, that Ghostface is actually her cousin Jill, who wanted to just be famous for something bad happening to her, because that is a new motive in the social media era. And we think that Jill has killed Sydney, but then there's a false ending hospital scene afterwards that happens, and Sydney ends up killing Jill, and everything is back right with the world, and Sydney and Gail and Dewey are all still happily alive and roaming Woodsboro once again.
Oh my God. Nailed it.
Yay!
Whoa.
Woohoo!
And that's the plot.
Amazing.
That was good. That was a really good one.
Fantastical. Yes, and this is only my second time watching the movie, but it's just so good. So obviously I've said 1,000 times I've seen this before and I like it. So I'm asking you guys, is this the first time you've watched it? And give me your initial thoughts of it. We'll start with Jamie.
This is the first time that I have ever seen Scream 4. And boy, I mean, I was going to say don't call it a comeback, but it's this is great. I had such a good time watching this. It's so much better than Scream 3, like leaps and bounds. I actually think it's also better than Scream 2.
I agree.
And yeah, it was just so, it definitely like kind of went back to the roots of finding that balance between like humor and horror without being overly over the top humorous, which was like kind of the direction that the series, the trilogy was going through. And then I think it found its footing again on this fourth one, which only makes me so much more excited for the fifth one coming out.
Yay.
Yeah, I just feel like this definitely got back to the roots and was just an overall really good time. It wasn't overly complicated. And I think that they keep thinking of really creative, witty ways to explore the meta. Like they keep trying to up the idea of the meta. The opening is really good.
Yes.
It's like really, really good. And I was shocked at like all the people that are just like immediately in this movie. Like it blew my mind. And I was just like freaking out on my couch. Brian will attest to that later. But
Yes.
it starts off really strong. I love the meta in this one. It's just an overall really, great installment in the chain.
Yeah. I mean, like Kristen Bell and Anna Paquin, just like,
yeah.
Hey girls, what's up? We're just gonna have this little nice cameo and just, Kristen's gonna go all crazy slasher and kill people, and it's just wonderful. Brian, your thoughts?
I had never seen this movie, and I've heard from people like you, some other friends who really love this movie, and I just didn't know what to expect, and I loved this movie. This was so good. I agree with both of you that this is behind 2 and 3, or in front of 2 and 3, like you know what I mean.
We'll revisit the directions later.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I loved it. I thought it was smart. I thought it was gory. I thought it was well acted, and something that it leans into that Jamie started to like allude to is how many famous people are in this. And when everybody is played by someone famous like this, like Adam Brody usually plays a sketchy guy, or at least we've seen him that way a lot. Anthony Anderson's well known. Her aunt or whoever the older woman was in relation to her, is also famous from like Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that. They're just so. The point I'm trying to make, I'm sorry, is that there are so many famous people in this, and they're leaning into that because then it's harder to guess who the killers are. Because like in the second one, like all of a sudden Laurie Metcalf shows up, and you're just like, oh, of course she's a killer. Like, but in this one, if she showed up, I'd have no idea if she was or not. So I like they leaned into that. I thought this movie was awesome. I thought all the performances were super fun. It was the opening. If the first movie's opening wasn't as iconic, this would be my favorite opening, I think. I just
Absolutely.
fell for the gag. I also love Amy Teagarden, who was in Friday Night Lights. I hadn't seen her since like the last time I watched Friday Night Lights. So it was just like, I loved everything about this movie, how meta it was, how they talk about a fourth movie in a trilogy, or the fourth movie after a trilogy and things like that. I just I really dug it. I really, really dug it. I thought Hayden Panettiere was awesome in this movie. I was deeply upset when she died because that was just really oh, that really is sad.
Well, it's also right after that great part where she's just saying all of those movies, and I just I just felt super validated in that moment. And then she just dies, and it's like, oh, but you were so good in this and knew all of those horror movies, and we stand Hayden in this movie.
Yes, we stand her. She's also will still be America's sweetheart. Remember the Titans? You can't kill that girl.
Totally.
What are you doing?
Wait, but have you seen the Bring It On that she's in?
We're not going to talk about
the
that.
crumping.
She's literally also an indestructible cheerleader in Heroes.
No way.
Yeah, but she's also a really great crumping cheerleader in Bring It On.
But I did love this movie a lot. I expected it to be good because people like it, but I didn't expect it to be really good, actually good, if that makes sense. It's not cult good. It's actually good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, we can have this discussion too. Of course, where it's drawing from the OG and we can, correlate the two, but do you think that this would be a good standalone movie if you did not have the reference, or does it just enhance it even more because of the OG reference?
This movie is not as satisfying if you haven't seen the other ones. It's just not.
Fair.
You don't know these. They don't do any work for you to get to know these characters because you're supposed to know them already. All of this is pulling from the first movie, like you just mentioned. There's a lot of moving pieces there. They mention Billy casually. If you don't know,
right.
That whole end sequence makes no no, this movie does not work. I think it still works as a fun slasher, but in terms of plot wise, this doesn't work without the other ones. At least the first one.
Yeah, That's fair. I mean, there are so many not only spoken references, but just things that happen that you're like, oh, when Charlie is sitting tied up on the patio, and you're like, oh, that's a reference to the first movie and the opening.
Totally.
And, them doing the questions from there. Or when the boyfriend is stuck in the closet, tied up because they're going to pin everything on him. It's like the same as when they were going to pin everything on Sydney's dad in the opening. And so you get those things, not only them talking about, you're the Billy to my stew or whatever they'd said,
right.
but, getting those references, but it's just nice to also have those little nuggets of like, oh, you're, really just recalling the OG. And they mention it multiple times. One of the things that I really, of the 1,000 things I love about this movie is the fact that they're always talking about the rules, but because this is number 4, they're like, you have 2 options. You can go the complete opposite way and do whatever you want to do, or you're going to just go back to the original. And it's a matter of like, oh, well, what are they going to do? Well, they're going back to the original, as opposed to like 2 or 3 where it's like we're in a sequel or we're in part of the trilogy. And so these are the rules and they kind of follow those rules. But now we're on the 4th one in the chain and you're like, well, what can happen? But the best option was for them to just do the OG one, and it just works so well. And to add to that, my question is, did you guess the killer? Was it obvious?
No.
This go around. Okay.
No,
absolutely
it wasn't.
not.
Guessed very, very wrong.
Tell me your guesses. Ooh, what'd you think?
I don't even remember at this point. We talked more about who we'd be upset that it was than we did who we thought it was, if that makes sense.
No, I started to talk out like possible guesses of like how I thought they were trying to frame it. So so I'll talk through. I will talk through my process if that's okay.
Yes.
So my first guess was, oh, maybe it's Alice and Brie, because like it would be really interesting if using this event as like a way to publicize Sydney's story more effectively, and like maybe she didn't want to come to this like bodunk town, and maybe by these murders picking back up, she would sell more books. Then I was like, okay, now they want us to really believe it's Judy because they're like going way over I was like, it's not Judy, but they want us to think it's Judy because they're trying so hard because she's obviously in love with Doofy, which I do not understand why. And then they retcon the fact that she's Sydney's classmate, weirdly standing in like the shadow. I didn't even see her in that scene until she like fully walked forward. I was like, who is she talking to? I couldn't see anything. It was very strange.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was super weird. I also, unrelated, guessed that Kristen Bell was going to stab Anna Paquin in that opening scene because I was like, Kristen Bell's being real shady right now.
Shady.
And then stabbed her. Who else? I basically thought it was everyone except for Emma Roberts. Oh, there was one point where Brian guessed Adam Brody because he historically plays the bad guy in things unexpectedly, and was like, this might be part of that Adam Brody trope.
Yeah. I did say that I would be disappointed if it was him.
Yes.
And then this became like the Trevor show where everything was being blamed on Trevor. So you knew it wasn't going to be Trevor, but like.
Yeah, because I don't think that they'll ever redo the Billy thing. I don't think that, I mean, unless they totally throw us for a loop in number 5, I just think that like it's been done. Like they keep talking about the meta and the idea that like things are getting wilder and wild. Like I just don't think they would revisit something because it's like it's been done. We want something new. So I didn't think that was going to be the situation. I didn't even guess the right like TV kid. I guessed the wrong, the one that was live streaming all the things.
Oh yeah.
I guessed him. I think I guessed him for the same reason that like just to go viral. But I guessed wrong. And so that has been Jamie guessing the wrong murders.
Well, also when they say the rule about how gay people don't die in those movies, the kid who actually ends up doing it, the Culkin sibling, makes a face. So I actually thought he was the closeted one because he makes the face.
Mm.
So that's why I kind of like discounted him
Yeah,
in that
sure.
moment. But I just thought that I really liked the twist, and I also like that we find out pretty early on who they are, meaning like we have another like 15 minutes left.
Right.
So that was really cool, and I liked that. And then it like just turned back into like a Scream movie, where at least honestly, Dewey's an idiot in this movie as usual, but he's not as funny, goofy, doofy.
I think I'm sorry. I think you mean doofy.
Sorry, Doofy is not as doofy
Yes.
in this movie, but he's still doofy. They don't lean into
yeah.
like the comedy of Doofy. I actually got frustrated by him because, and instead of just like rolling my eyes at him, which I think is like a good step in the right direction. Like,
Oh, with the stab in the shoulder.
well, I was happy he actually figured it out, and that.
Well, Gail helped him
Right.
figure it out.
Sure, but they didn't say anything. Like he was actually able. There wasn't a joke to be like there wasn't a joke. Then she corrects him.
Oh, left is right is left.
Yeah.
Doofy.
I like that. But there were other moments in there where he's on the phone. Like all of his goofy things with Gail like didn't totally work for me. And I have I kind of liked the beginning of this movie. I wrote down this movie felt like there was so much freedom without having to deal with Sydney's saga up front. And while I'm glad that it kind of tied in the end in a way that like did not like have the movie in a chokehold, if that makes sense.
Right.
And that's what there was something very freeing about this, that they weren't obliged to like do something in the Sydney saga, if that makes sense.
Oh, something else that I wasn't sure about, but Wikipedia has confirmed was the relationship between Sydney and her
Yes.
aunt. If it was her paternal or maternal aunt. And Wiki says that it's her maternal aunt.
Okay. I have something.
Which was another then I was like, okay, maybe it's her, because if that's her maternal aunt, then or aunt, however you all say it. And I say, aside, I call my aunts by the Spanish name, the Puerto Rican Spanish name. So all of my aunts are called Titi, which is why I'm like, I don't know how you say aunt or aunt. Anyway, but then I was like, okay, maybe it's her, because like maybe she's mad about like all the same thing, but just the wrong person. She's mad about all the attention that her sister got over all this stuff. And like, now it's her niece and like, blah, blah, blah. But I guess like they just didn't seem to talk about it enough, like about that relationship enough, which is why then Brian was like, no, it has to be the paternal one. Like there's no way, because then they would have to retcon all this stuff. They just didn't they didn't say anything.
That really bothered me. Now that I know that it's the maternal aunt, like it just seems like if she had an aunt that was her mother's sister, that like that seems like that would have factored in more into the original 3 movies, as well as they'd have like more conversations about the fact that there's this rampant killer on the loose. The original ones killed her mother. She had a half brother and then killed all of Sydney's friends. Like it just totally feels too casual. That if I have one like major plot bone to pick there and like creating a world, it's that one, no question. Like, that really totally bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, they only had that one scene in the kitchen where the mom makes like a side comment of like, well, nobody asked me about all of my issues and trauma and, and then it just kind of goes from there. But it is interesting watching it the second go around and kind of seeing how Emma Roberts is playing the role, because there's some expressions and things that she does and manners of speech where you're kind of like, oh, wait, something is going on there. Like every time kind of like Sydney would appear out of nowhere, it would kind of be like, yes, I'm surprised to see you, but also like, I'm surprised to see you because I need you to not be here. Like, I have an issue with you. And I think that's just a really fun testament to Emma Roberts' acting, but also the fact that this movie really kind of lends itself into, I don't know, I laugh at all the comments that Emma made about Nev Campbell's like ingenue days being over with.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because Emma Roberts was becoming the new Scream Queen in that instance too, because everything with American Horror Story and then having the TV show Scream Queens,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like she is the person, which is also a really nice trajectory from being a Nickelodeon kid, you know, and then being like the next face of horror, everything. And yeah, it's fun. This is the second time around going and seeing, oh wait, no, there is a little bit of a hint there, but I love that you guys like it was still completely new because I was ready for you to be like, oh yeah, of course it was Jill. Of course it was Emma.
I'm so no. Okay. I am mad though for all of the reasons that you said, because and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like Emma Roberts is like typecast a bit in playing this like consistent, like mean teenager role. Like she's always the like, she's the bitch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? I was like, oh, she's not a bitch this time. This is like almost weird. And I should have just known that it was a decoy. And the real thing is she was a bitch because she's so good at it. And
definitely,
I'm like, is this real? And no, I'm not calling you a bitch, Emma Roberts. I'm so sorry. But I'm just like, you're just so good. You're so good. It makes you wonder.
Wait, because this came out in 2011 and we're already knee deep in American Horror Story seasons by this point. Yes. So she had already maybe appeared in that?
That I don't know, but she was in.
I think you're right. Yeah, because Coven was 2013. That was, I think, the first one that she's in.
So this is before Coven.
So this is before. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
yeah.
Interesting.
Sorry, go ahead,
yeah. And then, so she's in that. So that's 2013 to 2014. Then she's in Freak Show. And in 2015 to 2016, she's in Scream Queens, then Cult, then Apocalypse, 1984. Yeah. So, and then she's a guest judge on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Absolutely.
Oh, she's in The Black Coat's Daughter. I forgot about that.
Yeah. That's interesting because she.
So this is before her like initial bitch casting time then.
Unless you count Hotel for Dogs as
yeah, because she was
or Nancy Drew.
I wonder if because her father's Eric Roberts and her aunt is Julia Roberts. So like I'm wondering if like, you know, that Julia Roberts kind of like good girl, like underdog, like, you know, hooker, like with a heart of gold persona, like was like, because she's a Nickelodeon girl, and then she's in like Aquamarine and Nancy Drew, so she's playing these like young, like, you know, like good natured characters or whatever, and then she does a lot of rom-coms, like it's kind of a funny story, not necessarily a rom-com, but like, you know, a dramatic comedy about mental health, and then she gets into like Scream 4 and it kind of blows up from there. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, but do you also, if you're thinking along just the general Scream lines, of course you don't think that someone in the immediate family of Sydney would be the one that's causing all of this. And then I also like the aspect of just the whole social media speech and her just saying at the end that, you know, sane is the new sick, or sick is the new sane is what she's, sick is the new sane. And the aspect of like, you don't have to have a talent or do anything in particular to be famous. You just need something bad to happen to you. And with that, Jamie, can we just discuss, I mean, how are we even diagnosing Emma Roberts' character in this? Because the fact that she is a high schooler at that, who's willing to lose her mom and all of her immediate best friends, and we don't even know like who killed who necessarily. I think at the end Charlie says like some of the folks that he killed himself, you know. But and I guess we can assume that he was the one who killed Emma Roberts' mother. But yeah, someone who is willing to do all of that, to hatch that plan, and not even for anything but just to have fans. She said she didn't want friends, she wanted fans.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we taking this? What is this coming from? Where is this coming from mentally?
I mean, they're definitely, you know, I feel like they try to kind of keep the same bucket, but I do think it's just getting harder and harder to like keep these buckets of psychopath and sociopath. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's clear that both of these kids like were doing things for the wrong reasons. I think maybe one can argue that they're both psychopaths because like they both were like pretty calculating when it comes to how they organized everything.
Mm-hmm.
Emma Roberts just like had a couple extra steps that the other guy was not involved in.
Right.
But yeah, like I don't know. And I mean, I think that they're trying to say something about, and I'll also say like in terms of like diagnoses, like I know I referenced the DSM, the diagnostic manual in previous episodes, but that bad boy does not get updated very often. I think like, oh man, I'm really going to date myself, but the DSM-5 is like the 5th update that came out in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, the last update I want to say was in 2000. So there we go.
Wait, because you said there's the DSM-5 now.
Yeah, so it's the same manual and they just keep updating it. But it takes a very long time for them to update because they're like, you know, it's like all of this research over long periods of time. And so they'll like make adjustments based on like, well, now we know more about like this particular thing, or like now we know that, you know, homosexuality is not something that is a mental illness. This should not be included in here.
Yes.
And like, we'll course correct, thank God. But there are still things in there that are problematic. And, you know, there are still things that aren't necessarily currently identified, but like, you know, like addiction to the internet, for example, I think is something that's like become more commonly discussed, but I don't and like I mentioned, I also haven't been fully trained in DSM-5. So if I'm missing this, my bad. But like, I don't think that's something that's like formally in the most updated version of the DSM, which came out in 2013. So like now we're in 2022 and like we have all of these different forms of social media. Yep. You know, we have people just spending hours and hours and hours on their phones. Or like people who talk about like porn addiction or like anything that's like outside of substance use, like isn't really, you know, diagnosed a ton. But like that being said, you know, I absolutely think that the amount of time that we're spending on social media can definitely like, you know, have a very negative effect on our mental health and well-being. Yeah. And who's to say like for someone who's as young as she is, like how that might have influenced her brain development, her social development, like all of these things have the potential to be influenced by her like obsession with social media, by her obsession with you know, like her life being on display, wanting to be famous, whatever like thing she's going for. Right. But also like kind of tangentially connected to this like family trauma that you know she says like everyone's only focusing on Sydney and you know, does she feel left out? Does she kind of like Cotton in like the earlier movies? It's like he really wanted that attention so badly. And like we weren't totally sure like if he was looking for like a way to turn his life around, like publicly, like show that, you know, like he is a good person and blah, blah, blah. Right. But like for Emma Roberts, maybe she felt neglected. Maybe she was neglected. Like we don't totally know what went on in her upbringing other than the fact that, you know, Sydney was like the person who got the most attention in their family as a result of all of these things that have happened to her.
Right.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that there's a lot of interesting things to think about when it comes to like what might have been the context of like why she's a crazy murderer.
Yeah, no, that just it brings up so many good points because when you think about it seems like she is just coming from a single parent home because we don't see a father figure in Jill's life. But I guess my next question in you discussing all of that, is it even believable then that this would be her motive when she seemingly does have friends who are around her, who care for her, a boyfriend that even though apparently they broke up because he cheated on her but wanted her back, but someone who was, you know, desiring her on top of still having like the love of her mom, would would it be believable that she would still just be craving the attention of strangers when she has all these other connections?
Yeah, I mean, that could be like kind of narcissistic, but I think also going back to like a core characteristic of a psychopath or a sociopath is like the lack of empathy, like the lack of connection to other people. And so, you know, she might be able to like see that they have formed bonds with her, but she might not actually care about any of these people. Like she might not have the ability to like form that same kind of attachment back and care unless it benefits her in some way. And so like she's been able to like manipulate those around her and like get things that she wants, but does she actually like have these relations in the same way that like, you know, Sydney was isolating herself, but like actually had friends and like trusted people and like connected with them and was vulnerable with them. I think with Emma Roberts, what they're saying, like what I would imagine is that like, you know, she's like formed quote friendships with them, but in reality, she's just like using them, manipulating them in order to like get what she wants out of those relationships.
Yeah.
Which is to be famous.
No, they're all
expendable.
Sense. Yes, they're all expendable. And yeah, I guess it is just the emphasis of, like you said, those people can form relationships with her, but she has an ulterior motive. So that's the only reason why she's keeping those relationships around, not because she's actually invested in them. No, that's really good.
Yeah, because you mentioned like even her mom. It's like, you know, it could be even your mom. Like you know, when you lack that empathy for other people, you know, it doesn't matter what the biological the blood connection is to someone. Like if like you just don't have that ability to like foster those connections, you just don't have that.
That is so crazy and so interesting. I mean, and she did make a side comment, Jill, in the movie about like her mother being like, oh, a sad casualty, but you know, whatever for the cause, you know, and it's insane to think about. But yeah, moving on to Sydney, because now we see her in this type of resilient role of like immediately helping out the friend across the street when that death happened, which I thought was a really nice kind of recall to like Nightmare on Elm Street, when on the original one, when, you know, her boyfriend across the street, she's watching him getting killed, you know. But yeah, we see Sydney, like she's not even trying to call for the police or anything. She's just like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to help with everything that has happened with her. Are we now to believe that she is fully healed enough in her trauma to be this resilient person? Or maybe it was because of her book that she wrote that was kind of like a cathartic experience for her.
Yeah, I think I was talking to Brian about that when we were watching.
Yeah, this is the journey of Sydney through these movies, like in terms of behavior and PTSD and all that, is like very interesting to me. So I like constantly turn to Jamie during the movie and be like, okay, like yes, no,
right, exactly,
maybe so.
Yes.
but no, that was kind of my thought process too, Nikisha, that like there could be some like, could it be really empowering and like cathartic for her to like, you know, get this story out there and like take back control? Because this whole time, the story that's like out there is being told by the media. It's being told by Gail, who wrote the book on this.
Yes.
I wrote the book on it. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But like, you know, it's everybody except for the person who like the story is actually about. And so I think it's, you know, it has the potential to be really meaningful if she herself is able to like speak on her own experience and like use that as a way to process. There, like, you know, there's strategies in therapy, not saying that like writing a book is therapy, but like that could be helpful in processing really traumatic things like journaling, and things like that, that like help you kind of start to like, you know, take back the story and take away the like intense, overwhelming feelings that are associated with it, like in the present. Like the thing is no longer, well, in Sydney's case, it seems to always be happening. But for other people that aren't Sydney, like the thing that happened, like isn't actually happening over and over. Well, again, in certain circumstances. Yeah. And so like, you know, how do you like take back control over your life and like your emotions and you know, your coping skills and navigating all of that. So like, I could see that being really, really helpful.
Absolutely. And in that same vein, so her manager, Alison Brie's character, makes a point about Sydney embracing being the victim. And I guess my question is, could that in a sense be a healthy way of coping with something, as far as like, if you're the spokesperson for all of these things and embracing like that, even though for the manager's purposes, it was just so that she could write more books and have more TV appearances. But if in embracing being the quote unquote victim, could that be some type of like cathartic thing? Or is that something that we have to let go of that, of that name for ourselves? Like we don't need to be the victim.
I mean, everyone is like very fixated on the term victim, and it's, I feel like it's really complicated because like I think that there's this parallel between like what is a victim versus what is a survivor. Kind of like is this underlying thing going on of like like, yes, she like Sydney has been on the receiving end of like these series of traumas that have impacted her and like happened like around her and to her directly. And like, you know, that could disempower someone, that could like take things away from someone, like literally and, you know, emotionally, psychologically, all of these other, socially, all of these ways. But like on the flip side, I think that Sydney is actually really resilient. And so like, I almost wonder if she is rejecting the idea of like being a victim. Well, because also like, I'm sure she's over the fact that like somehow she keeps stirring up these things that are happening. And so like, what does it mean for her to like be at the core, like being at the center of all of these things as like this victim? I think that I feel like she's like she rejects being told to embrace it. I kind of feel like, like when her publicist is kind of like in her face about it, like she's rejecting it because like, that's also not who she is. Like the publicist is obviously like being a stereotypical publicist and like that's just not who Sydney is, and so like she rejects that, which is kind of, I don't know, that's my take, but I don't know like what you guys think, if like you feel like she's this quote stereotypical victim or like kind of acting like a victim in any way, or if you feel like that doesn't necessarily define her, because I don't feel like it does.
I agree with that. I don't see her as a victim, as just being on the receiving end of things that have been happening, because she is trying to, well, every time she fights back, like in the moment physically, but she is also like trying to fight back with her life by taking back her life with the book and with being like a crisis counselor in the third movie and trying to be like a help and not let the things that have happened to her hinder her from trying to help other people. And I guess that is a good thing of just like victim versus survivor. But I would definitely, I mean, I say it in the movie, Sydney's a survivor. She has come out of all of these situations, not only just being alive, but also now still with her empathy and leading with, I'm still going to go and continue to help people. I'm not just going to sit in where I think where the whole Cotton Weary thing, like he was kind of on the side of just trying to still be a victim of it all and just like tell his story and like only gain the attention from that and not necessarily trying to move forward from that part of his life. Like he wants to hold on to that part of his life as long as he can give him everything that he wants in the moment. Where Sydney's just like really trying to move forward in life and move past it. But Ghostface just won't let her because we have another one coming out. So, geez.
No, can't catch a break. No breaks for her.
No breaks for Sydney. And can we just all agree that, like, if anyone has permission to never trust anyone again, like, it has to be Sydney because,
like, come on.
It's the family, the people closest to her. How do you even foster relationships with anyone after all this? Like, everybody is a suspect. And that leads me to this. Do you guys even do you have predictions for like Scream 5? What could happen? Who could die? Who the killer might be? Is it even going to be focused on them really? Like, or is it going to be like the new generation of people? What do you guys think?
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Which is exciting. Which is what is exciting about it. I think they're going to lean into new technology. I think they're going to lean into the idea of fandoms taking over content. I think they're going to lean because, like, when we were watching this, in my head, I was like, 2011 is not too old, but I feel like he was tapping into something that the cultural zeitgeist wasn't ready to tap into in terms of like what all of this social media and streaming is doing to us. And I feel like that definitely came through here. My assumption is that this next one is going to be like, I think about the world today, reboots, fans having opinions and being heard, and then like studios listening to that. I'm wondering if a lot of that is going to like infiltrate its way into the screenplay. Or maybe it's a prequel about Sydney in high school doing Peter Pan with Judy. They retconned it in this movie. Maybe they'll retcon it further. I love it's like, oh, we did the plays together, remember? I'm just like, okay.
You were an actor. We did the stuff together. That was a great scene though, too, with all like the shadows and creepy things. I mean, like
it was so silly.
It was so silly. Or even just like, but it was the exact right amount of not taking itself seriously and like being satirical and all of the things, especially with the police scene with Anthony Anderson and Adam Brody. Is Adam Brody? Yeah.
Yeah.
And them like Anthony Anderson, the longest death possible, just continuing walking after being stabbed in the head.
Oh, that was awful. And I hated that.
But it was just like you're talking about, and it's one of those things of like talking about the rules, and then is the rule going to happen or not? You know, like one cop is going to go away, and then when they come back, they'll find the other cop dead in the car, and it's like, well, no, they're both back together now, and then they're both just going to die. So it was just it's just genius. It was a really great time. I can't say enough good things about it. How are we feeling about Dewey and Gail in this? I think they were there. I think I mentioned in Scream 3 that it seemed like it was mostly about them. But this one, it just seemed like just enough. Gail is trying to get with the technology and the streaming and all of the things and uncover the murders, and Dewey's just being Dewey.
Oh,
Dewey.
Dewey not understanding what meta meant in the fourth movie did not make sense. That like really bothered me. Anyway.
Well, both of them, because didn't you say, like, how meta can you get? And he was like, what's meta? And she was like, I don't know. The kids just said it.
Oh, I didn't hear that second part. Maybe. I don't know.
I think that's what she said. She also was like, I don't know. They said it. So, here's where we're at.
Well,
it's like, come on, Gail.
I was happy that they started from a good place and not in an annoying place to another annoying place. I think that a lot of their conversation got annoying, like in general, when they were like, well, it's weird because like I want her to help, but like also I understand that like she can't be part of a police investigation, but also him keeping her out of a police investigation wasn't because of the rules, it was because of his own like ego. So like that was annoying as well. They also were, this is 2011. They get divorced in 2013, whether that's like the official divorce date or whether they were like on the rocks beforehand. I'm wondering if like, I don't know, but they just weren't featured as much in this one, which is fine by me, but they are featured in the middle, I guess. I think they were the appropriate amount. And I actually really did like the idea that Gail is a fish out of water now, where she just like she just like couldn't find her groove again because like what does she write about? She's like stuck in Woodsboro and like all that stuff, and then she finally gets something juicy to sink her teeth into, and then like her husband is keeping her away from it. Like that's some bullshit. So I'm glad that I mean their arcs weren't like amazing in this one. Not that I needed it, but they got the job done, I guess.
No, for sure.
And he got hit in the head with a bedpan, so that was funny.
Multiple times.
That girl was strong. I mean, all of the stabbing, didn't think twice about shooting. Also, Dewey still can't shoot anyone. He's just shooting into the abyss. Super annoying. But yeah, any other thoughts about this?
My favorite part of the whole movie was that Robert Rodriguez directed Stab.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That was very funny to us.
Absolutely. Yes.
I really dug this. I think that Mary McDonnell, who plays the aunt, I wish she had more to do because she's a wonderful actress. I thought, weirdly, Hayden Panettiere was my MVP of this movie. I just thought she's a very, of all of these movies with these random side characters, and I think Jamie's right, it might just be that one scene where she like lists off all of the movies. Also, like her hair was a little distracting, so I'll never forget that.
That short hair, like slick back.
Yeah, but of all the like side characters in all these movies, like to me, she stands out in like all four of these. Like it's maybe like her, Parker Posey. I can't even think of anyone else from the second one, and then like that stands out, and then the first one there, they all stand out.
Right.
Yeah. So I enjoyed watching her. I just had we had such a good time watching this. We even said in the middle of it, like Jamie even said, like, this is so engaging. I'm having a really good time because like in the middle of Scream 2, we just kept looking at each other like, can we even like sit through the rest of this? But
yes. And then Scream 3, you got to watch that in 3 different parts in itself just to get through it. So.
Oh, woof.
Oy.
Actually, Scream 3 is not as bad. Scream 3 is not as, what am I trying to say? Hold on, let me take a step back. Scream 3 is worse after seeing Scream 4, like on a first viewing for me. Like the movies were already getting more and more like silly, and even Scream 2 had that. So like I just kind of anticipated Scream 3 to be that way, just like was leaning into the horror comedy and all that. And then now watching Scream 4 and like Wes Craven, like how Wes Craven got his groove back, like
yes.
It made me appreciate, it made me just be like, Scream 3 felt like an obligation, whereas Scream 4 felt like his heart was in it, if that makes sense.
For sure. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because you guys said that the people who or writing or directing did Ready or Not, or did they do both?
They did Ready or Not. They did VHS. What was the other one we watched, Jamie? The Road something, the anthology movie, the Southbound Road.
Southbound.
Yeah, Southbound. That was really good. Yeah, I really like them, and I really hope that I hope that Scream 5 is as good as the early reactions are saying.
Okay. No, yeah, same. I mean, I have a feeling that we're now obligated. Gail, Dewey, or Sydney, one of them has to go. I think that might be one of the moves. I'm gonna put my
have a preference.
Yeah. I would put my money on Dewey that he finally like jumps in front of the knife for somebody else, for Gail or something like that. Like that would be my guess.
Yeah.
Jamie, it seems like Jamie wants that to come true deeply.
Yes. More of what I was like imagining was just like, is he going to start limping again in this one? Because he just like stopped.
He did.
Yeah, he's healed. I don't know.
I mean, it's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
I guess he made a full recovery.
Well, it switched sides and then it went away. So
that was the worst. Oh my God. Like they couldn't even just like watch the last one to remember which thing he was doing.
Wild.
Oh my God. Yeah. Fantastical. Well, Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah, let's do some Rotten Tomatoes.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Okay,
Hilarious.
what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm going to say 87.
Jamie?
I was going to say 76.
This has a 60%.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
All right.
We just loved it so
The
much.
franchise is showing its age, but Scream 4 is undeniably an improvement over its predecessor with just enough meta humor and clever kills.
Can you tell me what the score was for 2 and 3 again, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. So the audience score for this was 56.
People.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's look at the Scream collection overall. The Scream collection overall, oh wow, Scream 2, I guess we did, okay. So, Scream, the TV show, has a 61%.
Okay. Season 1 was really good. I enjoyed it.
Interesting.
The original Scream has a 79%. Scream 2 is 81%.
What?
Scream 3 is 41%, and Scream 4, as we mentioned, is 60%.
Wow.
Does the Scream TV show is in the same world as this? How does that work? Like, how do they not talk about this? Or, like, will they talk about it in the 5th movie? I don't know. Like, what was that deal?
From what I remember, because it was a while back when I watched the first.
Yeah.
But it was just literally the exact premise and the exact storyline of the first Scream. But I want to say it was just in a different town and different people, but the same exact thing. Like the same exact outcome and everything with the boyfriend and everything. Sorry, spoilers for that. But I don't remember it actually being like a reference to things that have happened. It was like its own entity, but just with younger people. But again, I could be like just missing something. But I just remember watching it and not thinking, oh, they're referencing whatever. It was literally just they're following these kids, and there's the Randy in the group, and then there's the newer girl who moved into town or something and has the boyfriend, but you know, the boyfriend is the one that's doing all the things. Like, yeah.
Cool. All right.
So
shall we do the 4 S's?
Yes.
Skull, scares, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horns 4 S's.
Okay, so we have the 4 S's, which are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. You're rating them 1 through 10, 10 being the best. Let's start with Skulls. How does this handle human behavior and mental health? Jamie.
I'm like super torn. I mean, I think I'm going to give it a 4 because I think that, you know, Sydney is just continuing to be badass and empowered. I think for the most part, people are acting like normal human beings in this movie, mostly. But like, I don't know. Emma Roberts' motive is like questionable.
All right. Nikisha?
Yeah, I was thinking around the 4-5 area. So I'll give it a 5, just with the conversations about Sydney's journey in general. It seems more believable now with her resilience. I'll give it a 5.
Sure, I'm going to give it a 5. I think I've given most of these 5s. Like, it doesn't do it and it does it at the same time. Like, it's I'll just give it a 5 because I don't think it does it worse than the other movies, but I don't think it does necessarily better. Scares. How scary was this movie? Whoa.
I'll give it a 3 because there was a jump scare that got me that now I can't remember what it was, but it did get me, and I was once again like, ugh, why? How? Stop it.
Yeah.
But it's not like too spooky scary.
Nikisha?
I'll give it a 4.5 for the insides on the outsides. And there were a couple of jump scares, but I think it was also my surround sound that just the noise got me. It was just so loud.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 4. I think this was the scariest of the bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a fair comparison because I don't remember the first time I watched Scream. And how scary it was. But this one actually, I felt like had like actual genuine scares, and the Ghostface wasn't as goofy as he is in some of the other movies. So yeah, I'll go with that. All right, Shakes. How forgettable? Will you remember this? Is this something you might rewatch because you want to get more of that, inject more of that Ghostface into your veins?
Directly into the veins.
Yeah.
No, this was definitely more memorable than the last two. I think I would give it like a 4. I definitely have been like thinking about it way more. I literally forget everything that happened in 2 and 3.
Truly.
Yeah. Nikisha?
I'm going to give it a 6 because it was great the first time and I was scared that it wasn't going to hold up when I watched it again, but it just does. It's just, it's wonderful. 6.
Yeah, I gave it a 6 as well. It holds up. I mean, it holds up in terms of like it lived up to the hype that a lot of my friends have around this. And I really enjoyed it. And I'll definitely remember it as like the second best Scream movie.
Yeah.
Until next week. Who knows? Okay. So suggestions. What would you suggest?
I'll go. Jamie's nodding her head. I said this earlier, but I'm gonna suggest the Scream Queens TV show for Emma Roberts because it's fun and kooky and campy, and it is also a slasher TV show. So Scream Queens.
Cool. I'm gonna go with I went a little bit different. I just went with like a little known Wes Craven movie that I really like, which is Red Eye with Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy. I saw it in movie theaters. I like it. It's really good. It's good, but like I feel like people don't remember it anymore. Like so, it was like
I remember
it. Jamie, do you
wait? Did she like on a plane? I'm sorry. What?
Yeah.
And did she like stab somebody with the pen? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I saw that in theaters too.
Nice.
So there's no more urban legend movies for me to recommend. But I think I'm going to go kind of along the same veins as Nikisha. And I really like the last season of American Horror Story that I like truly remember and really enjoyed is Coven. I love that season. I highly recommend it. I don't think you need to watch any of the other seasons, like the 2 before, to have to watch it since it's an anthology show anyway. but Emma Roberts is just like the best at being a bitch in that. And I just think it's really funny. And I like witchy stuff. So like sue me. I don't know.
We got like a little bit of a witchy thing.
Yeah.
Fantabulous. Well, we're all super excited to watch Scream 5 and see what we're in for, but this has been wonderful. And also,
We did it.
sadly,
We should be so proud
it.
of us. We did it. We watched the 4 Scream movies.
Yes. Yes, I will miss, however, the dynamic duo of Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson.
Sure.
But I am excited to see what new things are on the horizon with this one. So thanks for listening, guys. You can follow us on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram at Talk Horror Pod, POD. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That includes things like Stitcher, Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. Please rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you. Fantabulous. Well, I guess I just want to sign off with what Brian said of Scream 4, how Wes Craven got his groove back, because that was fantastic, because that's exactly what it is, how Wes Craven got his groove back. So thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.